Story 1. Entitlement spending is a specific category of government expenditure. It is not discretionary. People are entitled to this money. The negativity surrounding the term entitlement does not change this fact. If anything, it highlights the need for increased education in this country. For most individuals, their Social Security withholding is one of their largest expenses, which is surprising considering how poorly informed people are about it. Story 2. I don't care what it is called, but I have been forced to contribute to it for nearly 45 years, and I want them to uphold their end of the deal. Story 3. I am entitled to Social Security because I have spent my entire working life contributing to it. Story 4. This is not free money. I have been paying into it since I was 14 with my first summer job. If I took every dime of Social Security tax and invested that into a mutual fund, I would have a very solid retirement fund waiting for me. It's an entitlement program. I am entitled to it. Story 5. The issue isn't referring to it as an entitlement program because individuals are entitled to it. The real concern is that some people are attempting to portray entitlements in a negative light, equating them with the behavior of those who act entitled, a term used to describe individuals who behave as though they deserve something that they have not earned. Story 6. I don't feel anything because that's just what it's called. People are unaware and do not understand what an entitlement program actually means. Story 7. Many people here feel good about knowing the difference between entitlement spending and the sense of feeling entitled, which is a positive awareness. However, I am very skeptical that the feeling of deserving money from that program is based on your current legal right to it. We are all just one act of Congress and a presidential signature away from not receiving anything. Will you simply say, well, those are the breaks. The law is the law. I have to start figuring out what to do now? Or will you feel like you have been wronged? If it's the latter, you are exactly what this entitlement discussion is about. Your feeling of being rightfully owed that money does not actually come from the current legal framework. At its core, it reflects a sense of entitlement, ironically contrasting with what many here are asserting. Story 8. Entitlement is an accurate description. You are entitled to that money. The issue is that being entitled is often confused with people who feel that they are entitled to something they are not. It's your money. Story 9. The greatest piece of American propaganda is how the government convinced Republicans that they do not deserve to have their own tax dollars returned to them through services. Story 10. It is a problem that the term entitlement program has become somewhat negative. Social Security is an entitlement program. I paid money into it, so I am theoretically entitled to it. Story 11. Amused. It is part of the Newt Gingrich-Gopak memo Newspeak attack on America. Social Security is an entitlement. We are entitled to it because of our contributions to the trust fund. The right-wing propaganda machine has worked hard to make entitlement a negative term associated with unearned benefits. This is troubling because first, it is an attack on the Social Security program, and secondly, by extension, it is an attack on programs for those unable to earn, such as children, the disabled, and those affected by generational poverty. With one distortion of language, they can harm at least 4 groups of people. Story 12. It is the definition of an entitlement program. They are trying to change the meaning of the word entitlement. It is not a bad word, and by definition, it means something that you deserve. Please do not let them take that language from us. Story 13. It is an entitlement program. We are entitled to the benefit as we paid into it specifically to receive future benefits. Story 14. I feel like I'm back in 1990s high school civics, where I'm learning about the programs the American people are entitled to, which are called entitlement programs. There are many things worth fighting for lately, but that terminology is not one of them. Story 15. I feel entitled to it when I reach that age because I have been contributing to it throughout my working life. It is not an entitlement program. It is an earned benefit program. I do not understand why the alternative framing of it is tolerated. Story 16. To those who argue that it is an entitlement without explanation, you contribute to Social Security while you are working, and when you retire, that money returns to you. What this administration is attempting to do is take the money you paid into Social Security and give it to wealthy individuals. Please explain how I am mistaken. Story 17. It is accurate. I contributed to a program designed to provide support for myself and others when we are too old to work. We are entitled to that money as part of living in a civil society. Story 18. Not paying Social Security is theft. It is a deal we all agreed to by working. Making it private is a scam to add our retirement money into the pool of the wealthy stock market. Story 19. Since I have been contributing to Social Security for over 30 years, I feel as though I am entitled to it when I retire. Story 20. I was perfectly fine when they were called earned benefits. One of my pet peeves within the political language of American politics is allowing the Republican Party to set the tone of what we discuss and how we label things. Yes, entitlement literally means we are entitled to it, but earned benefits sounds better. Something you have earned is usually viewed more favorably than something to which you are entitled, especially in America. This is why the Republican Party paid Frank Luntz a significant amount of money to find the term entitlement, which polled unfavorably among Americans, leading to the adoption of the term entitlements. Story 21. While Social Security is an entitlement program, politicians use the term to describe receiving something for nothing, even when people have paid into it their entire working lives. They have somewhat successfully turned it into a negative term, and no one in the media ever challenges them with this simple fact. Story 22. I want them to stop taking supplemental security income out of my check if they are planning to reduce it this year. Certain entities want to take all the money we contribute to it. Story 23. It is amusing. It is an entitlement. You are entitled to Social Security because you pay into the system. Those who claim that the Social Security program is an entitlement in a negative way are misguided. Story 24. The interpretation of entitlement can vary. If used negatively, such as in the phrase free government handouts, it is misleading, as these benefits are not free. They are earned through payroll taxes. However, if entitlement is referenced in a legal context, meaning you have contributed to a government program and fulfilled all the criteria, then it accurately describes the process and the associated rights to benefits. Story 25. I think it is an entitlement program, and it's even funnier because I paid into it my entire life and will never see a dime from it. So, I guess other people are entitled to it, just not me. Story 26. I think they don't realize it's insurance we contributed to and can only collect after working and paying into it for at least 10 years of full-time work. Story 27. The people who use the term negatively are predominantly very conservative politically. I respond that, under the Second Amendment, they are entitled to own guns. They dislike this because they fail to recognize that a right is something you are entitled to exercise. Story 28. They know that the uneducated will not recognize the difference between being entitled and entitlement, and they are taking advantage of that lack of awareness. Story 29. I feel entitled to collect from the program I have paid into for 35 years at this point. If that is what they mean by entitlement program, then I agree. Story 30. It is my money, and I am entitled to it. It is entitlement spending, but I do not see that as a negative thing. Story 31. Entitlement is not a negative term in this context. Its meaning from a governmental perspective is that this is not discretionary spending. It is required by law. Story 32. It's the correct word. We are entitled to those things as we paid for them. Anyone who tries to use it negatively is unwelcome. Story 33. Since I was threatened with death to pay for the program, I am entitled to the benefits. Story 34. If by entitlement you mean getting back what you gave the government to invest, manage, and distribute upon retirement, then yes, I am entitled. I am in my early 60s and I have been paying into the system for over 40 years. I am entitled to receive what the government committed to providing me. If they cannot fulfill that, then they should return the Social Security deductions taken from my paycheck for over 40 years. Story 35. It is an entitlement. You work for it, you pay into it, and you earn the benefit at the end. You are entitled to enjoy the benefits. How is it that no one has any reading comprehension anymore? Story 36. Social Security, by definition, is an entitlement program. An entitlement program is a government initiative that guarantees certain benefits to a specific group or segment of the population. The term entitlement program has been misused by some to portray welfare as something undeserved for individuals who do not work. I have no issue with the term entitlement. I contributed to it, and I believe I am entitled to receive the benefits. Story 37. It's accurate. Unfortunately, the right has turned entitlement into a negative term, especially regarding workers. Story 38. I feel it is a lie, and as a 30-year-old, I think of it as if I end up with a single dollar from Social Security, it will be more than I ever imagined. Story 39. A communal retirement fund, similar to a pension, that should not be touched by the government, referred to as an entitlement by the wealthy who have been benefiting from taxpayers since the 1980s. It is concerning how they treat Social Security and the public. Story 40. Let's look at the definition of entitled. I am entitled because I paid in for over 40 years. Stop acting as if I am looking for a handout. This is mine. Story 41. I feel frustrated contributing to something without a choice, only to be criticized for expecting a return on my investment. Story 42. I feel the same way when any Republicans rename things they do not understand or want to cast a negative light on issues they do not approve of. I roll my eyes while I contemplate the general ignorance of Republicans. Story 43. There is nothing wrong with being entitled to what you have paid for. I feel entitled to live in my house and drive my car. The Republican Party has been criticizing entitlements as a negative aspect, much like they denounce anything positive that the government does. Story 44. It's an entitlement because I am entitled to it. It's my money that the government took with the promise that it would be repaid at a later date. If the government dislikes the program so much, then stop taking my money. Story 45. I am fine with it. I am entitled to receive the money that was promised to me when the government deducted it from my paychecks. Story 46. You are entitled to the money because it is your money. Like a bank, it is your money because you earned it through work. It was taken out of your paycheck. Came from you. They must give it back to you because it is yours. You are entitled to that money. It is an entitlement and it is a government program. It should be referred to as an entitlement program because it is. Story 47. I must acknowledge the former president and the Republican Party. They have convinced their own supporters to vote against their best interests. These individuals have contributed to Social Security their entire adult lives, just like their parents and grandparents. They will depend on this income when they retire, just like their predecessors. However, they have been told that it's detrimental, and they believe what they are told without thinking for themselves. If Social Security is abolished and they find themselves living in poverty during retirement, they will completely blame the Democrats. It truly resembles a cult. Story 48. For my whole life, I have heard that it would run out before I was of age to use it. I see it mostly as a tax. However, I am not pleased that the Social Security Administration is facing potential elimination. Story 49. Whenever Republicans use words like entitlement or spending cuts, they are specifically referring to programs that benefit the American people at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. That has always been their intention. If you are unaware, it indicates a lack of attention to the issue. Story 50. I graduated high school in 1992. One of my teachers was a financial advisor in his spare time. He made it clear to us as 17-year-old Generation X students that we would be paying upwards of $100,000 each into Social Security over the course of our working lives, but would likely never see a penny of it when we retire. Why? Because President Reagan recognized the substantial funds and decided to allow the government to borrow against it, planning to pay it back later, only to discover that no one intended to repay it. Reagan permitted Social Security to be raided. By 1992, it was evident that no one had a plan to restore those funds, and over 3 decades later, my teacher was absolutely right. Social Security has been systematically depleted by various administrations for decades. Now, I am 50, set to retire in 12 years. My retirement strategy is based on the assumption that I will never receive any of my contributions to Social Security, even though I will have paid substantial amounts monthly into that system for nearly 50 years. Social Security is not a handout. It is your own money, and for it not to be available when you retire is outright theft. The fact that we are even compelled to contribute in the first place is unacceptable. I would prefer that money go into my own savings, where it belongs. I am willing to allow some of my taxes to contribute to a social safety net, but do not take my money with the assurance that it will be available for me in the future when it is clear that it will not. Story 51. If it is an entitlement program, then cancel and refund my investment. Otherwise, they can remain silent and allow me to receive the money I am owed when I retire. Story 52. I feel entitled to Social Security in the same way I feel entitled to my paycheck. I made my contribution, and I should receive my payment for it. The individuals who are in the wrong are the extremely wealthy, whose contributions are capped at a fraction of their income, and who want to use the entire system to enrich themselves. Story 53. Someone mentioned it earlier, but I am frustrated with this individual. I have been contributing to this system longer than he has been in our country. Story 54. I feel frustrated that we are hesitant to call Social Security by its name because many people do not understand what it means to be an entitlement program. It is embarrassing for American society to have such a limited understanding of a program that affects nearly everyone. Story 55. It is an entitlement program. People are entitled to food, shelter, healthcare, and the financial resources to pay for these necessities. Any negative perception of the term entitlement should be questioned. Story 56. At the very least, you are entitled to the money you paid in because that is literally how Social Security works. You contribute your whole working life to have that safety net when you need it. So when Republicans call it an entitlement program like it is some kind of government handout, it is beyond insulting. If they do eradicate Social Security, do we get our money back? Or is it just gone, funneled into tax cuts for billionaires and corporate subsidies like everything else they touch? I will never understand how Republicans convinced so many working-class people to fight against their own interests while protecting the ultra-rich, who are the real welfare queens living off huge government contracts, tax breaks, and loopholes. They keep voting for politicians who are literally telling them, to their faces, that they want to gut the very programs those same voters will need someday. And for what? Some vague promise of fiscal responsibility from the same people who explode the deficit every time they are in charge? It is like watching someone cheer for their own house to be burned down because the arsonist told them it would own the opposition. At some point, you have to ask, do the Republicans really not see they are being played? Or do they just not care? Story 57. Respectfully, how do you think we all feel? How do you think it feels knowing our parents and grandparents may suffer? Millions of our fellow citizens voted for this candidate, and now we all have to face the consequences. Story 58. I put money into it, so I am entitled to get money out when I retire. Thus, it is an entitlement. Medicare is also an entitlement. This is different from needs-based or means-tested programs like supplemental security income and Medicaid, which are more akin to welfare programs. I have worked with beneficiaries in various capacities throughout my entire career, and as a native Canadian, I find this American reluctance to use the word entitlement mind-boggling. Story 59. I mean, yes, you contribute to it when you work in most cases, but the specific money you pay isn't earmarked by the government to go to you when you're 65. Somewhat like the old saying about planting a tree whose shade you will never know. I believe we should be entitled to it, but I also feel we should be entitled to taxpayer-funded healthcare for all citizens, similar to what the developed world has. I think the government should provide jobs to people living in areas with little or no opportunity. The point being, I'm probably the wrong person to ask here. Anyway, the fact that we're discussing Social Security so fervently makes me think a competent government would be preparing for a scenario in which Social Security is no longer adequate or sustainable. Story 60. Entitled in the literal sense, we are entitled to it because we paid into it. It irritates me when people confuse this with the idea of an entitlement complex, which is the feeling of being entitled to something to which you are not entitled. Story 61. They successfully changed the meaning of entitlement to a negative word. It actually means what you are owed, so I don't see an issue. Story 62. I feel like I have worked my entire life supporting the retirees who went before me, and I am entitled to the same deal. Story 63. I mean, that's the legal definition of it. Other than creating noise on Reddit for karma or more likely paid propaganda, which is obviously what this is given it is a brand new account, what's the point of the question? I ask facetiously since getting the less educated and more easily manipulated subset of Reddit users riled up is clearly the intended purpose. Story 64. It is the language many groups have used for any American seeking assistance from a government that is supposed to serve them. Now, which group of people is the majority? They are the ones who use that language. Story 65. It's acceptable because I am entitled to the money that I contributed to the system since I was 14. I am now 61. If it is not an entitlement, please return my money. Story 66. Definition. The right to benefits specified especially by law or contract. Most Americans pay into Social Security and are therefore entitled to the benefits of the program. The issue arises when politicians try to make individuals feel guilty about entitlements. I have more of a problem with labeling it a Ponzi scheme than with acknowledging what it truly is. Story 67. I am honestly torn. I agree it's an entitlement program, but with that being said, don't take it out of my paycheck if, when my time comes, I won't be entitled to it. Story 68. It is money you are entitled to. It's not a bonus. It's not paid out at the discretion of anyone. It's the money that we contribute to and earn. Story 69. I don't care what they call it, as long as they don't ruin it before I get to use it. I'm 30, and there's no way it won't be gone. Story 70. I think people confuse a person who feels entitled with the actual definition of entitlement. The reason it's called that is that you are literally entitled to it because you paid into a system, not because you are an entitled person. Essentially, many Americans struggle to understand the meaning of words. Story 71. Like they don't know what they are talking about. It's not going to go bankrupt in 2035 or whatever. The trust fund is ending then, so yes, benefits will sadly go down unless changes are made. But the Social Security Administration is just the government basically saying, I want to make sure you have something coming in when you are an old person, so we are going to take it out of your check so that you don't just buy a bunch of collectible cards. Social Security is easily the best domestic policy the United States has ever created and is far better at helping retired people than the 401k plan. The 401k has only been around since the 1970s. Social Security has been around since the 1920s. Every generation that has seen the majority of their working lives use the 401k plan, the silent generation, but baby boomers were the ones who really first embraced it, has 401k accounts that are way below what every financial analyst recommends having at their age. Story 72. If they want to get rid of it, fine. Stop taking it out of my paycheck and give everyone the lump sum of what they have contributed for their entire life up front. It's because it is our money. It is not government-sponsored. It is literally our money. So we are entitled to it, not the wealthy individuals who seek more tax breaks. Story 73. The individuals who want to reform Social Security are not typically those who actually need it. They are often the ones looking to divert that money for their own purposes elsewhere. Story 74. The right-wing rage against entitled people has ruined the word entitlement. When you pay into those programs, you are entitled to the benefits they provide. They are, therefore, entitlements. However, because Fox News redefined entitlement to mean receiving benefits you don't deserve, people now lose their minds when you call the program exactly what it is. Story 75. If they try to cancel it, they had better pay us back what we contributed. Otherwise, the rules will no longer apply. Story 76. The word entitlement, in this case, does not carry the connotations that many people associate with it. It is more of a legal term meaning that the program guarantees benefits to those who are invested in it. Story 77. It is a government retirement account. We all contribute with our taxes throughout our lives into this account. When we reach the designated retirement age, we can cash in and receive monthly payments until we pass away. This is not something that only the economically disadvantaged receive. If you work, you contribute, and if you reach the age, you receive benefits. I cannot understand why some people equate Social Security to food assistance or housing support. I also cannot understand why people do not consider housing, food, and healthcare as basic human rights. But I suppose I am just a liberal. Story 78. The same way I always feel about propaganda. The deconstruction of our education system has been successful. They have succeeded in creating an ignorant population that is easy to manipulate and exploit. Anyone who would refer to Social Security as an entitlement program would have to be purposefully dishonest or simply too ignorant to understand Social Security. Story 79. It is an entitlement. You paid into it, therefore you are entitled to that service. It is like booking a flight a month in advance. You are entitled to a seat on that plane. Story 80. It is an entitlement welfare program for retired and injured citizens that guarantees a basic level of income and health care. It is one of the most compassionate programs the people of the United States have ever implemented for their fellow citizens. Anyone who seeks to dismantle it shows a lack of sympathy and empathy for their fellow individuals. You cannot take money with you, and currently, taxes on the wealthy are so low that they would hardly notice if we eliminated the tax cap or made the Social Security tax a progressive tax that was double for the highest income bracket. Why shouldn't those with the most resources help those with the least? Is that not one of the key tenets of Christianity that all politicians pay lip service to? Story 81. I understand why the wealthy do not support Social Security. For them, it is unnecessary. They have saved enough money that their families do not need to work for generations. Social Security is not for them. It is for the rest of the country that is struggling so much that they cannot save for retirement on their own. The ultra-wealthy seem to have forgotten that we live in a society. They keep pushing regular people further down, and they are unlikely to appreciate the inevitable consequences. Story 82. Entitlement is one of those words that some individuals have managed to make negative, similar to liberal or woke. Since I tend to ignore their linguistic antics, I feel fine about it. People should be entitled to an entitlement, hence the name. Story 83. They take Social Security out of my paycheck whether I want them to or not. I work hard, so you can bet I feel entitled to it. Story 84. It's an entitlement program in the sense that it is legally required to be funded by the federal government, just like veterans' benefits are. The other aspect is that there is no discretionary aspect to eligibility. If you meet the eligibility requirements, you are entitled to benefits by law. All this is important. We want Social Security to be funded by law, not subject to the whims of Congress in any given period. We want people who have paid inappropriately to be entitled to their benefits, independent of their political beliefs, religion, location, ethnicity, income level, or any other factor. For those who may not understand, it is not a savings account. You do not pay in with the expectation of getting out what you put in. What you pay currently supports current Social Security recipients. When you retire, current taxpayers will be paying for you. That is the biggest problem. At some point, it is likely to receive less than it pays out because of demographic shifts, changes in the workforce, and similar factors. Story 85. I feel fine. I am entitled to the benefits of the system I have been contributing to for my entire life. What bothers me is the implication that we do not deserve our Social Security. Usually, it is some wealthy individual making the claim. Story 86. It is an entitlement. I paid into it. I am entitled to those funds. They are trying to make entitlement a negative term so they can justify eliminating the program and privatizing it. Story 87. It makes me wonder what they think that means. They are called entitlements because we are entitled to them by virtue of the fact that we paid for them. We pay for them, by the way, with no option not to pay for them. So if they don't uphold their end, that's outright theft. Story 88. It is an entitlement program. What is the problem? Why would you ever let other people's words affect you? Story 89. Entitlement? No, I have paid a significant portion of my paychecks my entire life into Social Security, and you know what? I am pretty sure that when I reach retirement age, there won't be a single cent I will get back out of it. It makes me want to sue them in civil court to get all my money back. If I hadn't had to pay so much into Social Security my whole life, I might have been able to invest that and have an actual retirement fund, but as it stands, I know I will be working until I drop dead. I want to be clear about some things, though. I do not have any complaints about anyone who receives Social Security benefits because they are disabled. I believe that our society should take care of people who cannot take care of themselves. However, the whole system has been mishandled to the point that the original intent of Social Security is no longer viable. Meanwhile, the current administration would leave disabled people without support, just let them suffer, and they will not restore Social Security to its original purpose. Instead, they will defund it and effectively steal the money I and hundreds of millions of Americans have paid into it their entire lives. Story 90. It has always been exactly what other users have said. We are entitled to that money. The issue is that the right-wing propaganda machine is the best in the world at changing the meaning of words to fit their narrative. Story 91. As someone who has contributed to it for 20 years, I expect to receive my funds back if I do not have access to it when I am older. Story 92. The wealthy can disregard that. Social Security wages are capped at approximately $145,000. So Social Security is disproportionately funded by those who earn significantly less and contribute a higher percentage of their income. Reducing Social Security and Medicare to finance additional tax cuts for those who are not contributing at the same rate is completely unacceptable. Remove the wage cap and then they can complain. Story 93. I have been paying into Social Security since 1982. I am entitled to that money. Story 94. It is an entitlement program and I want them to keep that name so they all remember that we are entitled to it. Story 95. Being entitled and feeling entitled are two different concepts. I do not feel entitled to Social Security. I have worked and done everything to qualify, so I am entitled to Social Security. Story 96. It is our money. I am giving you money to hold for me when I get older. The government acts like they are entitled to borrow from it and not pay it back. If they ever cut the program, they better give everyone their money back. Am I right? Story 97. Fine. It is. We are entitled to it by virtue of paying into it. What irritates me is that the term entitlement program has become a negative label. Story 98. It is an entitlement. We pay into it. It is our money, and we should get it back when we can no longer work or if we were unable to work in the first place. Story 99. As an American worker, I find it disappointing that they are taking Social Security from my check, knowing I may not be able to receive Social Security benefits when I need them. Story 100. I left the country. I am gaining residency and eventual citizenship in Uruguay. The United States has always been a challenging place, heading toward authoritarianism. Story 101. It is one of the few topics I will actually stop to discuss. Frustrates me. I have been contributing to it since I got my first job washing dishes at 13. Yes, I am entitled to that money. Story 102. The real entitlement programs are the subsidies that have supported Elon Musk and made him the richest person alive. At least with Social Security, individuals pay into it for life with their taxes, whereas Elon receives tax money while contributing even less to the system. This seems completely reasonable and fair. Story 103. I don't think entitlement program is derogatory. I contribute to it, so I am entitled to receive benefits from it. Story 104. I am very frustrated. I am 55 years old and have been paying into the system for a long time. Don't take my money and then call me a freeloader for wanting it back. I suspect it will be gone by the time I retire, and I will be angry about it. Story 105. I feel that I am entitled to it considering how much I have already paid into it, and I disagree with anyone who thinks otherwise. If they are going to shut down the program, I want every cent of my money back, with interest. Story 106. Social Security is an entitlement program that helps prevent deep recessions, poverty, and high rates of suicide while providing generational wealth. These are the benefits of a rich and powerful nation. Story 107. It's the same thing they say about the New Deal. The GI Bill was great because it allowed minorities to access education, but then it was criticized and welfare became associated with it. Everything is considered socialism when helping the people, but the banks and airlines must be bailed out, and that's capitalism. Story 108. It doesn't bother me because I am a reasonably intelligent person who understands that it is an entitlement and that I am entitled to receive it because I have been paying into it since my first part-time job at 15 years old. People who are bothered by it being called an entitlement are confusing it with being entitled, which is simply unreasonable. Perhaps they should read more books. Story 109. It is an entitlement program. You pay into the system, and you are entitled to the proceeds since you have contributed. That is literally what it is and how it works. The government is actively trying to take away what you have put into the system instead of fixing the problem. People should be held accountable for this action. Story 110. I think it's a fine term because we are entitled to our money. Don't make us call J.G. Wentworth for cash now. Story 111. Then stop taking it out of my paycheck and pay me back. I have been working since I was 14. I have been paying into Social Security for 31 years. Are you really going to say that I am not entitled to what I have already paid? Story 112. We are entitled to the money. We have paid into it for years, and it is not our fault if the government made mistakes and did not collect taxes from wealthy individuals and corporations. That is not my fault, and I will not go without something I have earned and contributed to since I was 15. There will be consequences. Story 113. I am fine with it. Just give me every dollar back that I have paid into the program over my 30 years of working, and I will be on my way. Story 114. I've been pretty certain that Social Security was going to be depleted before I ever got to benefit from it since I was around 16 years old. I was laughed at and assured that it would not be accessed and no party would pursue it. Now at 42, many of those who laughed are terrified they will be cut off. I have done my best throughout my working life to not rely on it, so I am not particularly concerned, but I am disappointed. It is an entitlement. We have allowed that word to be distorted as if it is a handout. That is not its true meaning. Story 115. You're absolutely right. I'm entitled to it. I have paid into it for 50 years. Wall Street elites are not entitled to my money. Wealthy individuals want to become even richer. What a group of unfortunate individuals. Go ahead, ban me. Story 116. Many people need to learn what words actually mean. It's an entitlement program because I'm entitled to it. I'm entitled to it because I've been paying into it my whole life. Social Security and Medicare are accurately referred to as entitlement programs. Story 117. The whole concept of Social Security as an entitlement is misguided because it was never the government's money to begin with. Congress does not fund Social Security. The people do. That is my money. It is the money that my employers and I have been contributing through payroll taxes since I first started working. Entitlement is not the right term. That is my money, and I want it back. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.